My hands were shaking as I sat in that cold courtroom, but not from fear anymore. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't afraid. I was excited. Judge Carter had my papers spread across her desk like a puzzle she was putting together piece by piece. Brandon sat next to his lawyer, that same cocky smile on his face that I'd grown to hate. His mother Patricia was right behind him, whispering something that made him chuckle. They thought this was going to be easy. They thought I was still the same weak woman who let them walk all over me for years. "Your Honor," Brandon's lawyer said with confidence, "my client requests that the court consider Mrs. Martinez's emotional state during this proceeding. She's been under tremendous stress and may not be thinking clearly about these requests." I almost laughed. Even now, they were trying to make me look crazy, just like they planned. Patricia leaned forward and whispered loud enough for me to hear, "She'll be lucky if she gets enough money for a tent under that bridge." Brandon snorted, covering his mouth to hide his grin. But Judge Carter wasn't smiling. She was reading my documents with the kind of focus that made the whole room go quiet. Her eyebrows kept getting higher and higher as she turned each page. Then she stopped. Her face went completely still. "Mr. Martinez," she said slowly, not looking up from the papers. "Are you aware of what your wife has submitted to this court?" Brandon's lawyer shuffled through his papers, looking confused. "Your Honor, we received the standard divorce filing, property division, spousal support requests, the usual—" "No," Judge Carter interrupted, her voice getting sharper. "This is not the usual anything." That's when I saw it, the first crack in Brandon's confidence. His smile flickered for just a second. Patricia stopped whispering. Judge Carter picked up the first document and held it up. "Mrs. Martinez has provided this court with evidence of systematic financial fraud, tax evasion, and benefit fraud spanning the last 2 years." The color started draining from Brandon's face. Patricia's mouth fell open. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "she has submitted recorded conversations, bank records, and photographic evidence of deliberate asset concealment and conspiracy to defraud." Brandon's lawyer was frantically flipping through papers now, his confident expression completely gone. "Your Honor, we weren't provided with any of this evidence during discovery, because Mrs. Martinez filed these documents under seal for her own protection," Judge Carter said firmly, "given the nature of the evidence and the potential for witness intimidation." I watched Brandon turn to look at me for the first time since we'd entered the courtroom. His face was white as paper. Patricia was gripping the back of his chair so hard her knuckles were turning white. "This court has reviewed financial records showing unreported income of over $40,000, Judge Carter announced. "Evidence of forged signatures on bank documents, recorded conversations discussing plans to hide assets and falsely claim mental incompetence." Brandon tried to stand up, but his lawyer pulled him back down. "Your Honor, surely there's been some mistake." "The only mistake," Judge Carter said, looking directly at Brandon and Patricia, "was assuming that Mrs. Martinez was as naive as you believed her to be." I felt a small smile creep across my face. For 3 years they had called me stupid, weak, worthless. They had no idea that every cruel word, every nasty plan, every illegal scheme had been carefully documented by the stupid woman they thought they could destroy. Patricia was shaking now, her face pale and sweaty. Brandon kept looking back and forth between me and the judge like he couldn't understand what was happening. "Mrs. Martinez," Judge Carter said, turning to me with something that looked almost like respect, "these documents paint a very different picture of your marriage than what was initially presented." I nodded calmly. "Yes, Your Honor. I wanted to make sure the court had all the facts." Judge Carter picked up another thick folder. "And there's more?" "Much more," I said quietly. Brandon made a choking sound. Patricia grabbed his shoulder, her eyes wide with panic. Judge Carter opened the second folder, and I watched my husband's world begin to crumble, 1 page at a time. 3 years ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Brandon was handsome, charming, and he made me laugh. When he proposed after 8 months of dating, I said yes, without hesitation. I should have paid more attention to the warning signs, but love makes you blind to red flags. The first red flag came during our wedding planning. Patricia insisted on being involved in every single decision. She picked my flowers, changed my menu, and even tried to alter my dress because it was too flashy for her son's bride. Brandon just shrugged whenever I complained. "She's just excited," he'd say. "She's been waiting for me to get married for years." I told myself it would get better after the wedding. I was wrong. 2 days after we returned from our honeymoon, Patricia showed up at our door with 3 suitcases and a moving truck. She announced she was moving in to help us adjust to married life. I looked at Brandon, expecting him to tell his mother that newlyweds needed privacy. Instead, he hugged her and said, "Great idea, Mom. Elena could use the help learning how to run a proper household." That's when I realized I hadn't married just Brandon. I had married his mother, too. Patricia took over my kitchen immediately. She rearranged all my cabinets, threw away my favorite coffee mugs because they were cheap-looking, and posted a cleaning schedule on the refrigerator with my name at the top of every chore. "Brandon works hard all day," she explained when I protested. "The least you can do is keep his house clean." His house, not our house. His house. Within a week, I was cooking breakfast for both of them every morning, packing Brandon's lunch, doing all the laundry, and cleaning the entire house while working my part-time accounting job from home. Patricia would sit on the couch watching her soap operas, occasionally shouting orders at me. "Elena, the bathroom needs scrubbing. Elena, Brandon's work shirts need ironing. Elena, make sure dinner is ready by 6 sharp." When I tried to talk to Brandon about it, he acted like I was being unreasonable. "She's just trying to help," he'd say. "You should be grateful. Most wives don't get this kind of guidance." Guidance. That's what he called it when his mother criticized everything I did. The way I folded towels was wrong. My cooking was too bland. I didn't iron his shirts properly. I wasn't keeping the house clean enough. "Your mother treats me like a servant," I told Brandon one night after Patricia had spent an hour lecturing me about proper vacuum techniques. Brandon laughed, actually laughed. "You're being dramatic. She's just particular about how things should be done. You'll learn." But I wasn't learning fast enough for Patricia. She started inviting her friends over to show off how well she had trained me. I would serve them tea and cookies while they talked about me like I wasn't even there. "Brandon did so well finding a girl who knows her place," one of them said. "Elena's very obedient," Patricia replied proudly. "She's finally learning how to be a proper wife." The worst part was how Brandon encouraged it. He would come home from work and immediately ask his mother how I had behaved that day, like I was a child who needed supervision. "Did Elena remember to start the roast at 3?" he'd ask. "Did she clean the baseboards like you showed her? Was she respectful when you corrected her?" I felt like I was disappearing. The confident woman who had run her own small accounting business was being replaced by someone who asked permission to buy groceries and apologized for breathing too loudly. My friends stopped calling because I was never available. My family lived across the country, and Patricia made sure I was too busy to talk to them when they called. I was becoming isolated, exactly like they wanted. "You're so lucky to have us taking care of you," Patricia would say with that fake sweet smile. "Without Brandon, you'd probably be living in some tiny apartment, eating ramen noodles every night." Brandon would nod along. "Mom's right. You should appreciate what you have here." I did appreciate it at first. I tried so hard to be the perfect wife and daughter-in-law. I thought if I just worked harder, cleaned better, cooked more perfectly, they would finally accept me. But nothing I did was ever good enough. And slowly, I began to realize that it never would be. 2 months before I filed for divorce, something happened that changed everything. I should have seen it coming, but I was still trying to save a marriage that was already dead. It started on a Tuesday morning when Patricia announced she had invited someone special for dinner. She was practically glowing with excitement as she bustled around the kitchen, pushing me out of the way to cook herself. "Who's coming?" I asked, genuinely curious since Patricia never cooked. "Someone very important," she said with a mysterious smile. "Someone who will remind Brandon what a real woman looks like." My stomach dropped. but I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was just one of her church friends or a neighbor. I was setting the table when the doorbell rang. Patricia rushed to answer it, and I heard her gushing voice from the hallway. "Melissa! Oh, you look absolutely beautiful. Come in, come in." A young woman walked into our dining room, and I understood immediately why Patricia had been so excited. Melissa was everything I wasn't. Tall, blonde, perfectly made up, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She was also at least 5 years younger than me. "Brandon," Patricia called out, "come meet Melissa. You remember her, don't you? She's Jennifer's daughter from my book club." Brandon appeared from the living room, and I watched his face light up in a way it hadn't when he looked at me in months. "Wow, Melissa," he said, actually straightening his shirt. "You've really grown up." She giggled like a teenager. "Thank you, Brandon. Your mother has told me so much about you." I stood there holding a stack of plates, feeling invisible. Patricia hadn't even introduced me. "Elena," Patricia said finally, like she'd just remembered I existed. "Put those plates down and get our guests something to drink. Melissa, what would you like? We have wine, soda, whatever you want." "Wine would be lovely," Melissa said, settling into the chair that was usually mine. I served dinner while the three of them talked and laughed like old friends. Patricia kept bringing up Brandon's accomplishments, his promotion at work, how successful he was. Melissa hung on every word, asking questions and complimenting him constantly. "You must be so proud to be married to such an amazing man," Melissa said to me during dessert. Before I could answer, Patricia jumped in. "Oh, Elena knows how lucky she is. Don't you, Elena?" I nodded and smiled, but inside I was screaming. This wasn't a casual dinner. This was an audition. Patricia was interviewing my replacement right in front of me. After Melissa left, Patricia couldn't contain her excitement. "Isn't she wonderful?" she gushed to Brandon. "So pretty, so charming, and she comes from such a good family. Her father owns 3 car dealerships." Brandon was nodding along. "She seems nice." "Nice?" Patricia laughed. "She's perfect. And she's single, you know. Just broke up with her boyfriend last month." I was washing dishes, but I could hear every word. They weren't even trying to hide it from me. "Mom," Brandon said, but he didn't sound upset. He sounded interested. "I'm just saying," Patricia continued, "a man like you deserves a woman who appreciates him, someone who can give you the life you deserve." That's when I snapped. "Excuse me," I said, turning around from the sink. "I'm standing right here." Patricia looked at me like I was a bug that had crawled out of the drain. "Yes, Elena, we know you're here. We're not blind." "Then maybe you could stop talking about replacing me while I'm in the room." Brandon's face darkened. "Nobody's talking about replacing you. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" I asked. "Because it sounds like your mother is already planning your next wedding." Patricia stood up, her face red with anger. "How dare you speak to me like that? After everything I've done for you, this is the thanks I get? What have you done for me?" I shot back. "You've made my life miserable from day one." "I've tried to make you into a proper wife," Patricia screamed, "but you're hopeless. You're weak, you're ungrateful, and you're not good enough for my son." Brandon didn't defend me. He just stood there watching. Patricia's voice got even louder. "Mark my words, Elena. When Brandon finally comes to his senses and divorces you, you'll be sleeping under a bridge like the worthless woman you are." Brandon laughed. Actually laughed at his mother's cruelty. "And I won't even visit you there," he added with a smirk. That night, lying in bed next to my husband, who had just threatened to abandon me to homelessness, I made a decision that would change everything. I was done being their victim. That night, after Brandon fell asleep next to me like nothing had happened, I stared at the ceiling for hours. Their cruel words kept echoing in my head. Sleeping under a bridge. Won't even visit you. The way they had laughed together at my pain. But something else was echoing too. Something Patricia had said months ago that I'd pushed to the back of my mind. She had been bragging to one of her friends about how smart Brandon was with money, how he always found ways to keep more of what he earned instead of giving it all to the government. At the time, I thought she just meant he was good at budgeting. Now I wondered if there was more to it. The next morning, I waited until they both left. Brandon to his construction job, Patricia to her weekly doctor's appointment for her bad back that somehow never stopped her from rearranging furniture when she was angry. I had the house to myself for the first time in weeks. I started with Brandon's home office. He kept it locked, but I knew where he hid the spare key. Inside his filing cabinet, I found folders I'd never seen before. Cash receipts for side jobs that weren't on any tax documents. Payments for weekend work that he'd never mentioned to me. Thousands of dollars that should have been reported as income. My accounting background kicked in immediately. I started making copies of everything, organizing the papers by date. The pattern was clear. Brandon had been hiding income for at least 2 years, maybe longer. But that was just the beginning. In Patricia's room, I found something even more shocking. Disability benefit statements showing monthly payments for her inability to work due to chronic back pain. The same woman who had spent yesterday moving all the living room furniture because she didn't like how I'd arranged it. I remembered all those times she'd disappeared for a few hours, claiming she was going to physical therapy. I decided to follow her the next time. 3 days later, Patricia announced she was going to therapy. I waited 10 minutes, then drove to the address on her appointment card. The building was there, but Patricia wasn't. I sat in my car for an hour. She never showed up. I was about to leave when I saw her car at a small office building 2 blocks away. I parked and watched through the window as Patricia sat at a desk, answering phones and filing papers. She was working. The woman collecting disability for being unable to work was working a cash job. I took pictures with my phone, my hands shaking with anger and excitement. This was fraud. Serious fraud. But I needed more evidence. I needed proof of what they were really planning. That weekend, I told them I was going to visit my sister for the day. Instead, I went to an electronics store and bought the smallest recording device I could find. When I got home, I hid it under the kitchen table where they always sat to talk. The next morning, I pretended to leave for my part-time job, but parked around the corner and waited. After an hour, I snuck back into the house. They were in the kitchen, and what I heard made my blood run cold. "The divorce papers will probably come soon," Patricia was saying. "That little mouse doesn't have the spine to stay married to a real man." "Good," Brandon replied. "I'm tired of pretending to care about her feelings. Melissa is so much more fun to be around." My heart stopped. Melissa. He was already seeing her. "Just make sure you hide the cash from those weekend jobs," Patricia continued. "If Elena finds out about that money, she might try to claim half of it." "Already done," Brandon said. "I moved it all to the account under your name. As far as any lawyer knows, I only make my regular salary." "Smart boy. And I'll make sure to tell everyone how unstable she's been acting, how she talks to herself and forgets things. By the time we're done, no judge will believe anything she says. I had to cover my mouth to keep from gasping. They were planning to make me look mentally ill. They were going to steal money that was legally half mine and destroy my credibility in court. "What about the house?" Patricia asked. "She can't afford the payments on her little part-time job," Brandon laughed. "She'll have to sell it, and I'll buy it back for cheap through a friend. She'll end up with almost nothing." "Perfect. Then you and Melissa can start fresh without any baggage from your first mistake." First mistake. That's what I was to them. I snuck back out of the house and sat in my car, shaking with rage. But underneath the anger was something else. Something I hadn't felt in years. Power. They thought I was weak and stupid. They had no idea that their little mouse had just recorded them confessing to multiple crimes. They were planning to destroy me, but I was going to destroy them first. I drove straight to the library and started researching divorce lawyers, but not just any lawyers. I needed someone who specialized in cases involving fraud and hidden assets. I needed someone who could help me turn their own weapons against them. Finding the right lawyer was harder than I expected. Most of the attorneys I called wanted retainers I couldn't afford, or they seemed more interested in quick settlements than fighting for justice. But then I found James right. His office was small and cluttered, nothing like the fancy law firms downtown. But when I played him the recording of Brandon and Patricia planning to defraud me, his eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "Mrs. Martinez," he said, leaning back in his chair, "your husband and mother-in-law just handed you the keys to the kingdom. Do you understand what you have here?" I nodded, but I don't think I really understood yet. Not completely. "This isn't just a divorce case anymore," he continued. "This is criminal fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. We're not just going to get you a fair settlement. We're going to make sure they face consequences for what they've done." James helped me understand that I needed more evidence. The recording was good, but we needed documentation, bank records, tax returns, proof of Patricia's illegal work, evidence of Brandon's hidden income. "Can you get access to his computer?" James asked. I thought about Brandon's laptop that he left on the kitchen counter every night. "Yes, but I don't know his passwords." James smiled. "You'd be surprised how many people use the same password for everything. Try his birthday, your anniversary, his mother's name. Men like your husband aren't usually very creative." That night, after they went to bed, I crept downstairs to Brandon's laptop. The first password I tried was Patricia's birthday. It worked. What I found made me sick to my stomach. Email after email between Brandon and Melissa. They'd been seeing each other for 3 months, long before that dinner at our house. The messages were disgusting, full of plans for their future together and cruel jokes about me. "Can't wait until the divorce is final," one of Melissa's messages read. "Then we can finally be together without hiding." "Soon, baby," Brandon had replied. "My lawyer says Elena won't get much. She's too stupid to fight for anything." But the worst part was an email thread between Brandon and someone named Tony about hiding money. Tony was apparently helping Brandon move cash into offshore accounts that couldn't be traced during the divorce. "Make sure everything's clean by next month," Brandon had written. "The mouse is getting suspicious." The mouse. That's what he called me in his private messages. I printed everything and saved copies to a flash drive. Then I found something that made my hands shake with rage. Photos. Brandon had been taking pictures of me around the house, but not normal pictures. Pictures that made me look crazy. One showed me talking to myself while cooking, but I remembered that moment. I'd been on a work call with my headset on. Another showed me looking confused and disheveled, but that was taken right after I'd woken up from a nap. He'd been building a collection of evidence to use against me. The next day, I called James with everything I'd found. He was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. "Elena," he said finally, "I've been practicing law for 20 years, and I've never seen anything this calculated. They weren't just planning to divorce you, they were planning to destroy you completely." We spent the next week building our case. James hired a private investigator named Carol who specialized in financial fraud. She was a tiny woman with gray hair who looked like someone's grandmother, but she was ruthless when it came to following money trails. Carol discovered that Brandon had been hiding income for 3 years, not 2. The total amount was over $60,000. She also found proof that Patricia had been working her cash job for 18 months while collecting disability benefits. "But here's the really interesting part," Carol told us during one of our secret meetings at a coffee shop across town. "Patricia's been depositing some of Brandon's hidden money into her own accounts. She's not just helping him commit fraud, she's stealing from him too." I almost felt sorry for Brandon. Almost. The private investigator also followed Melissa and discovered she wasn't as innocent as she pretended. She was married. Her husband was deployed overseas with the military, and she was cheating on him with my husband. "We could contact her husband," Carol suggested. "Military spouses take adultery very seriously." "Not yet," James said. Let's save that for when we really need it. Meanwhile, I had to keep pretending everything was normal at home. It was the hardest acting job of my life. Every morning, I made breakfast for the two people who were planning to destroy me. Every evening, I listened to them make cruel jokes about my future homelessness. But now, I had a secret weapon. Every cruel word, every nasty plan, every illegal scheme was being carefully documented. They thought they were so smart, but they had no idea that the stupid little mouse was building a trap that would catch them both. The hardest part was staying calm when Patricia started bringing Melissa around more often. She would sit in my living room, flirting with my husband while his mother encouraged it. "You two look so perfect together," Patricia would coo. I would smile and serve them tea, knowing that every visit was being recorded by the new cameras Carol had helped me install. They were digging their own graves, and I was just handing them bigger shovels. The last month before filing for divorce was like living in a nightmare, except I knew I was going to wake up soon. Brandon and Patricia had become so confident in their plan that they stopped trying to hide their cruelty. They thought they had already won. Patricia started packing my belongings while I was at work. I would come home to find my clothes folded in boxes and my personal items wrapped in newspaper like I was already moving out. "Just trying to help you get ready," she would say with that fake sweet smile. "You'll need to find a nice little apartment soon. Maybe something near the homeless shelter so you'll have somewhere to go when you can't make rent." Brandon thought this was hilarious. He would come home from work and inspect the boxes like he was checking Patricia's progress. "Don't pack her winter clothes," he told his mother one evening. "She won't need them where she's going." They were talking about me like I was already gone, like I was already dead. The worst part was watching Melissa become a permanent fixture in my house. She started showing up for dinner 3 times a week, then 4, then almost every night. Patricia would cook special meals for her while I was relegated to cleaning up afterward. "Melissa has such refined taste," Patricia would announce. "She really knows how to appreciate good food." Brandon would nod along, complimenting Melissa's dress or her hair while completely ignoring me. Sometimes I would catch them holding hands under the table, thinking I couldn't see. One night, I came downstairs for a glass of water and found Brandon and Melissa kissing in my kitchen. They didn't even stop when they saw me. Brandon just looked at me with this smug expression and said, "You might want to knock next time." In my own house, in my own kitchen. But every cruel moment was being recorded. Every insult was being documented. Every illegal conversation was being captured by the devices Carol had hidden throughout the house. James was building our case like a master architect. We had financial records showing 3 years of tax evasion. We had proof of Patricia's benefit fraud. We had recordings of them planning to hide assets and make me look mentally unstable. We had evidence of adultery and conspiracy. "They've given us enough to put them both in prison," James told me during one of our final meetings. "But I want to make sure we have everything before we file." The breakthrough came 2 weeks before I planned to serve the divorce papers. Patricia made a phone call that changed everything. I was in the laundry room when I heard her talking to someone in the kitchen. The recording device picked up every word. "Yes, Dr. Morrison. I need you to write a letter about Elena's mental state," she was saying. "She's been acting very strange lately. Talking to herself, forgetting things, having mood swings." My blood ran cold. Dr. Morrison was Patricia's doctor, the one who had been signing her fake disability papers. "I know you don't usually see her," Patricia continued, "but as a family friend, I'm sure you could write something based on my observations. Just say that, in your professional opinion, she seems unstable and might not be capable of making sound financial decisions." She was bribing a doctor to lie about my mental health. This wasn't just fraud anymore. This was medical fraud and perjury. "Brandon will make it worth your while," Patricia added. "The same arrangement we have for my back problems." I had to sit down. They had been bribing Patricia's doctor to fake her disability claims. This was bigger than I had imagined. That night, James and I met with Carol to plan our final strategy. We had enough evidence to destroy them both, but we needed to be careful about timing. We file the divorce papers next Monday, James decided. But we don't reveal any of the evidence until the final hearing. Let them think they're winning right up until the end. What if they try to move more money? I asked. Let them, Carol said with a grin. Every transaction they make now just adds to their crimes. They're so confident that they're getting sloppy. The weekend before filing, Brandon brought Melissa to our house for dinner again. This time, he announced that she would be staying the night. Elena can sleep in the guest room, he said casually. Melissa and I need privacy to discuss our future. Patricia clapped her hands together like this was wonderful news. Oh, how romantic, you two are perfect together. I packed a bag and went to the guest room without a word. Let them think they had won. Let them celebrate their victory. In less than a week, their whole world would come crashing down, and I would be the one holding the hammer. Judge Carter continued reading through my documents, and with each page, Brandon and Patricia looked more terrified. The confident smirks had completely disappeared from their faces. Mrs. Martinez has provided this court with bank records showing systematic concealment of income totaling $63,000 over 3 years, Judge Carter announced. Mr. Martinez, are you aware that hiding assets during divorce proceedings is considered fraud? Brandon's lawyer was frantically whispering to him, but Brandon just sat there staring at me like he'd seen a ghost. Furthermore, the judge continued, Mrs. Martinez has submitted evidence that Mrs. Patricia Martinez has been collecting disability benefits while working an undisclosed cash position at Morrison Medical Billing. Patricia made a choking sound. Her face had gone completely white. Your Honor, Brandon's lawyer stammered, we weren't aware of these allegations. They're not allegations, Judge Carter interrupted sharply. Mrs. Martinez has provided photographs, bank deposits, work schedules, and recorded conversations as evidence. She held up a thick folder, including recordings of both defendants discussing plans to hide assets, bribe a medical professional for false documentation, and deliberately mislead this court about Mrs. Martinez's mental state. Brandon finally found his voice. That's impossible. Elena doesn't have what, Mr. Martinez? Judge Carter asked coldly. The intelligence to document your crimes? The courage to stand up for herself? The evidence to prove everything you've done? I watched my husband's face crumble as the reality hit him. The stupid little mouse had outsmarted them all. Judge Carter picked up another document. Dr. Morrison has already been contacted by the State Medical Board regarding his involvement in fraudulent disability claims and his agreement to provide false mental health assessments. He's cooperating fully with authorities. Patricia started crying, actual tears streaming down her face as she realized her whole scheme was falling apart. The court has also been provided with evidence of adultery, Judge Carter continued, including photographs and communications between Mr. Martinez and one Melissa Chen, who is currently married to an active duty service member. Brandon's face went from white to green. He hadn't known I'd discovered Melissa's marriage. Mrs. Chen's husband has been notified of the affair, the judge added. Military authorities take adultery very seriously, as I'm sure you're aware. My lawyer, James, stood up. Your Honor, given the extensive evidence of fraud, asset concealment, and conspiracy, we request that all marital assets be awarded to Mrs. Martinez along with punitive damages for the emotional and financial harm caused by the defendant's criminal behavior. Judge Carter nodded. Mr. Martinez, Mrs. Martinez, you have the right to remain silent, but I must inform you that criminal charges are being filed against both of you. Tax evasion, benefit fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted perjury. Patricia collapsed back into her chair, sobbing uncontrollably. Brandon just stared at the table, his whole body shaking. This court awards Mrs. Elena Martinez full ownership of the marital home, all bank accounts, retirement funds, and the vehicle, Judge Carter announced. Additionally, Mr. Martinez will pay spousal support of $2,000 per month for 5 years. But she wasn't finished. Mrs. Patricia Martinez, you are ordered to repay all fraudulently obtained disability benefits, totaling $47,000. Both defendants are banned from contacting Mrs. Martinez except through legal counsel. I felt tears of relief streaming down my face. After 3 years of being treated like garbage, justice was finally being served. Furthermore, Judge Carter continued, Mr. Martinez's contractor's license is being suspended pending criminal investigation. Mrs. Patricia Martinez will face federal charges for benefit fraud. Brandon's construction business was over. Patricia would likely go to prison. Everything they had built through lies and cruelty was crumbling around them. As the judge finished reading the order, 2 police officers entered the courtroom. They had been waiting outside for this moment. Mr. and Mrs. Martinez, one officer said, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and tax evasion. I watched in amazement as they handcuffed Brandon and Patricia right there in the courtroom. Patricia was still crying, begging the officers to let her explain. Brandon just looked defeated, like he finally understood that his victims could fight back. As they were led away, Brandon turned to look at me one last time. The arrogance was completely gone from his eyes. In its place was something I'd never seen before: respect and fear. How? He whispered as the officer guided him past my table. I stood up and looked him directly in the eyes. You called me a stupid little mouse, I said quietly. But you forgot that even mice can bite when they're cornered. Walking out of that courthouse was the most liberating moment of my life. The house was mine. The money was mine. My future was mine. That evening, I sat in my kitchen, and called my sister to tell her everything. For the first time in 3 years, I was alone in my own home, and it felt like paradise. Brandon and Patricia had tried to destroy me, but instead, they had created something they never expected: a woman who knew her own worth and wouldn't let anyone take it away again. The bridge they thought I'd be sleeping under? I owned it now.